I'm going to record. So welcome back, Dr. Hernandez. We're going to be talking about today some upcoming engagements, how people can find out about the upcoming engagements. And then also we're going to review your N400 Part 12 quiz. So let's get started.
Sounds good. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before we go forward?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Tomorrow is July 4th, so happy July 4th. Hopefully everybody is staying home.
Yes.
Using a mask.
Oh, I have to tell you, just before you called me, I was listening to a Starbucks album, Indivisible, and on there they had the Star Spangled Banner, but it was in Spanish. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. And that's just when you called.
Oh.
Yeah, that's just when you called. Okay, so I'm getting ready to share the screen. And this is the first thing we would like to talk about. So this is USCIS.gov/outreach. Let me actually go to the outreach one. So up here. So a lot of people have been asking me the questions about where they can find out more information about when people are going to be invited in for their interviews. So I personally don't know this information. All I know is what USCIS has said, and they basically have said that now all their field offices are operational and are basically taking interviews. However, people are still very, very anxious about their interviews that are being rescheduled. So one way that people can find out more information about the USCIS is that they can go to the outreach page. So it's USCIS.gov/outreach. You can look at
if you just put into Google, because this is what I did today, is USCIS outreach. That's all I did.
Okay.
So I didn't have to put .gov. I didn't have to. I'm just as far as my Google, it was real easy. USCIS outreach, and it took me right to this page.
Yeah, but once you're there, make sure you're on USCIS.gov because you don't want to be on .com or anything like that.
True.
This is their. So if you go to national engagements, sometimes they have large national meetings where they're talking about new policies. There's none that's being they're scheduled right now.
The national engagements are so that people from all over the United States, citizenship instructors, for example, from all over the United States could attend. And that's to me what a national engagement is. Yeah. Really big. The last one was like thousands of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's lawyers or people involved with immigration law. It's not
all kinds of people.
It's not people who are actually in the process of applying because
not students. Yeah,
they want to ask about their own case. It's like, can you look up my case? And it's kind of like, no, actually, we're here to talk about policy.
Exactly. No, but that's going to be true, Jennifer. That's going to be true even if it's at a local engagement. That none of the presenters are ever going to talk about individual cases because they're doing general information.
Okay, so the next thing is that you can go look at upcoming local engagements, and I didn't even know about. I knew about this page, but I didn't realize that something is happening in my own city. So this is Campbell, California, which is right next to San Jose, and
look at the date. Look at the date.
15th?
The 15th of July. Yeah.
So what you do, you register from here. It's going to take you out of the system, and basically you're signing up with Santa Clara Library. Now, if you don't live in San Jose, do I suggest that you do this? I do not suggest that you connect up with the one in San Jose. What I suggest you do is contact your own local library and ask your local library to create a meeting with USCIS to have them come in and talk about what's going on. Now, this one is a virtual meeting. So our libraries are still closed, but they're creating a virtual meeting where people could come in and learn more about the citizenship process.
Excellent idea, right?
Yeah.
Excellent idea that even though we can't get together physically, we can still have access to a person from USCIS, and they can answer questions, general questions, I'm sure.
Okay. Now, I would like to go on to your one of the tools that you've created. It's your it's for part 12, and it's about definitions. And so many people have questions about part 12 that we really need to go through this. So, can you talk a little bit about this this form that you have?
I'm going to tell you the story of this paper.
Please.
You know, I had a citizenship student who was a manager, right? He spoke English well, and he was the manager of a store. And he went to the interview, and one of the first questions they said is, have you ever filed your income? Have you ever failed to file? And he came back to class and he said, teacher, I went totally blank. I don't know what file is, because in a normal ESL class, we don't really talk about filing, right? But if you're in citizenship, oh yes, you have to talk about this word, because you have to take in your income tax forms from past years to have them in case the officer wants to see them. So that's how it got started. So then I realized that here he was, this wonderful English speaker, but he wasn't attuned to the vocabulary, that special vocabulary that's on especially part 12 of the N400. And so at that point, I began, all right, I said, oh, I have to include this now, because I don't want another student to come back to me and say, he passed, but he just said, teacher, I was totally blank when they asked me. And so, you know, what did I do? First of all, I had my students take out their N400s, and then we started circling these words that are so difficult, right? And so we start with number 1, number 2, claimed, and almost each of the questions, you're going to see a word that's really hard to understand, but it is the crux of the question, right? So I went from there, we circled all these words, and then I thought I need to give my students a simple word that if the officer asks them, what is claimed, what is filed, what is genocide, they need to have something to easily explain. Not that they don't need a dictionary, but just something to indicate to the officer that they understand the question. Right. So you put them in alphabetical order. These are the words that I developed for my students. It would be easy. So look at number 1. Number 1 is accused, right? But the word that's on the application is charged. It has nothing, but accused is the equivalent of charged. Accused is, what do we call a cognate? Sorry, is a cognate. And so if you're a Spanish speaker, you're going to understand this word accused. I don't have to explain it to you. You can figure it out because it's similar to the word in Spanish, right? Right. Then we come to believe. And on that same section of on another section of the application, it says advocate. This is a very elegant word, but in essence, it means, do you believe? And they're talking about, do you believe, do you advocate for the destruction, to destroy the United States? I don't remember the exact words, but do you remember? I have an application here, but
that's okay. That's okay. Let's just continue.
All right. So then I have number 3, conditional freedom. And there's a question about, have you ever been on probation, right? Because they ask about your legal, any problems you might have had with the police, right? So what's another word for condition? What's the word on the application? Probation, right? Yeah. Okay. Then I gave my students the word crazy. It's pretty informal, but there's a question that talks about, have you ever been declared mentally incompetent? And the incompetent, if the officer were to ask you what is incompetent, in this case, crazy means mentally ill, but a student can easily catch this word crazy. We're trying to make it so a student can understand, right?
Okay. So okay. Let me add one, so you could say legally incompetent. Legally incompetent, because competent means you can do things. Incompetent means you can't do things.
That's so good. Yes.
Basically, you can't think. You can't do something. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Oh, that's good.
So crazy. Okay.
Then
next
we
one.
have on there is a section that is, have you ever been Oh, give me the word. I'm totally blank right now. Totalitarian.
Oh.
All right. Have you been a member of a totalitarian party or a government, right? And totalitarian is pretty tough, but dictatorship is not. We understand this word, and in Spanish, there's a cognate. So dictatorship, if somebody asks you what is totalitarian, you can come back with dictatorship, and you yourself can understand it. You know what you're saying.
Total. I always tell my students they has total control.
Oh, nice. Interesting. Okay. That's good. Oh,
Yeah.
That's good, Jennifer.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I like dictatorship because a lot of people are going to know this.
Exactly. You don't have to teach them. They know what there'll be an equivalent. Yeah, at least in Spanish, it's cognate. So, I don't have to sit there and explain because they know.
Right.
The word is similar to their word, right?
Okay.
Right. So then we have, here I put discriminated, but the word on the application is persecuted. Have you ever persecuted someone, right? And so what does persecute mean? Well, it means, do you discriminate against somebody? Persecute is this idea that you, for a reason of their religion or their race or their national origin, or because they're a male or female, that you would discriminate against them.
I want to point out two things in this word. If you take a look at discriminate, the CRIM, here it means, whoa, I did not want to do that. You basically have the word in there, crime. Okay, so have you ever committed a crime, a hate crime against somebody? And also the word dis means bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
so if you think about it that way, that's another good way to think about that.
But again, it's a cognate. People will understand that word.
Okay.
I don't usually have to explain it because people have an equivalent, right? So number 7, there's a question on the application. Have you ever committed a crime, right? And it's possible that the student doesn't understand commit. They'll understand crime, but they won't understand the word commit. And so if the officer asks them, then it's to do or make a crime, something very simple. That's committed is an elegant word for doing or making, right?
Okay, so one of the things that my students do is break the law. They know this is the idiom. So it's always good to know idioms, but I think to know, to say to do or make a crime is so much easier to remember than the whole thing that I brought up about break the law, because that is an idiom. So that's great.
Well, and idioms are nice, but they're more difficult because it's not word for anyway.
Yeah. Well, if we were talking about Spanish, how would you say do they have something like break the law in Spanish or no?
The word is commit.
It's commit.
We have this word, although it's interesting that usually they're, people don't, I know that dictatorship, there's some easy ones, but
okay, let's continue on.
Cognate would be commit, but to make it simple so that people understand to do or make a crime. Okay. All right. This was the one that got me started, if you remember.
Yeah.
The student. All right. And the word is file, because that's the official word for doing your income tax.
And I wouldn't even think about that. File. What are we talking about? Filing your taxes. And then the thing is that they're asking you, have you ever failed to file?
Now what I do, let me tell you what I do, is I just say, did you ever forget? Because people understand that word forget. So that's the way I phrase it. Did you ever forget to do your income tax? When I'm working with that question, that's what I do. Because fail is not a word that's going to be easy to understand, because most people would think of pass or fail. That'd be the only way. But to not do, forget works for me, forget.
Okay, let me get that in red. Okay, good. Okay, so that is really great. And I think that's so helpful, because what's happening July 15th?
Woo! Your income tax is due. It should have been done. All right, they changed it this year.
Haven't done it yet. So
all right, Jennifer, get to it now.
Yeah. Okay, now let's go to number 9.
Okay. The word on the application is convicted.
Okay,
right?
Great.
But people know this word guilty because it's the opposite of innocent. So if people were having trouble with guilty, I would say not innocent, and then they'd get the idea that that you're guilty. So, but the word on the application is convicted. These are more elegant terms. That's all.
Okay, good.
Right. Number 10. The word several times on the application, they ask you if you have bought and sold weapons, or if did you teach people how to use weapons? So the word is weapons. But if some people might not know weapons, and it doesn't sound like the Spanish word at all, which is armas, but guns. Hey, everybody, as far as I know, almost everybody knows what guns.
Yeah. So they're talking about guns, knives, rifles, bombs, anything like that. Yes. Anything that could hurt or kill another person. That's what they're mostly concerned about. Mm-hmm. Okay, next one, please.
All right. So there's another section that talks about, have you ever sold narcotics? And they might ask you, what are narcotics? And so I've given them one, heroin, right? Mm-hmm. But it can be cocaine, But anyway, the idea is that they be able to explain the word narcotics.
So the thing is
thinking about narcotics, but they certainly know what heroin is.
Okay, so on if you're talking about CASAS, they usually want you to give you two examples. So you have heroin, cocaine, opium, and even meth. Okay. These are all illegal drugs.
Right. Well, my students often say marijuana, and so I stop them and I say, marijuana is not illegal anymore, so we don't want to say that word anymore.
According to the federal government, it's still illegal.
Yeah, but in California and over where I am, you just don't want a student to get into trouble, so I stay away from there.
Yeah. Well, not illegal. This is a new computer. I'm a poor typist, so illegal drugs. By the way, I have to just say this to the students. This will be available. This document will be available for you to download after we're done with it, okay? So don't worry about that. Everything's going to be okay. Okay, now, I couldn't bring myself to say Adolf Hitler because that would have put it at the very beginning. So let's talk about Hitler.
Okay, so there's a question on the application that says, did you ever help the Nazis? This goes back to the application is a pretty old, the N400 originated, these kind of questions come from World War II. So the question is, did you ever help the Nazis? And then what is a Nazi? And so I tell my students, who's the most famous Nazi? Unfortunately, it's Adolf Hitler. Most of us know this name. Mm-hmm. And so if you are asked, what is a Nazi? Then you could say, oh, that's a person like Adolf Hitler, right?
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. I have been teaching for 30 years. So I have had students who were children when Hitler was around. But
oh, really?
Now I don't think there's anybody that I know, not anybody in my classes now who
okay. I had somebody from Colombia, and when he walked in, this guy was 6'6". He played basketball for the Colombian national team. However, his grandfather was a Nazi who had escaped to Colombia. Uh-huh. This guy had, even though he was Colombian, he had a Spanish first name and a very, very, very German last name, and several German names to go along with it. The guy was the nicest person in the world. And it's just, this is something that some of our family members did. That shouldn't determine the what happens to the children. Okay, so let's go on to number 13.
Yes. All right. So there's a question about, have you ever been hospitalized or sent to a mental institution? The word is institution, and the problem is the word institution has a lot of meanings. But on the application for citizenship, the institution is a reference to the mental hospital. Right. Have you ever been interned? Have you ever been a patient? I always say to the students, have you ever been a patient? You can visit somebody in a mental hospital. If you have a family member, you can always visit them. That's not what they're asking you. They're asking you if you were an actual patient in a mental institution, right? Or in a mental hospital, because people are going to be hesitant. They want to make sure that when you take when you do the application and go through the interview, that you are totally there. You know, we don't want to, I always tell my students, we have lots of crazy people. We don't need more. So I hate to say it. That's the way I put it.
And it's just not because we live in California. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. I have heard so many times when they're like, oh, you guys are crazy in California. I'm like, no, we're not. We're really.
Sometimes.
Yeah, right. Sometimes. Okay.
So number 14 is, there's a question on the application that says, have you ever been a member of a terrorist organization? And I have had students in my classes over the years stopped and they say, okay, the officer says, now tell me what is terrorist, right? And my students, it was a long time ago, and they referred to ETA, which was a terrorist organization in Spain.
Yeah.
But for people who are going through class now, you know, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these are examples. Osama bin Laden, these are people who were terrorists. So it's a good way to just show the officer that you know when what you understand the question.
So do you mind if do you want me to take this out, Islamic State, and put on ETA or anything like that?
No, because I think that at this time ETA is not. So no, I wouldn't. Yeah.
But okay, so like some people are saying that, what's the one that they're saying that is one in the United States right now? Oh, I can't think of it. Anyway, Muslim people are okay. ISIS, not okay. Okay. Right. Now, kill many people. Right. And I want this one.
The application, you know, was changed in about 2016. More questions were added to this section, part 12. And one of those was this question here. Have you ever participated in genocide? So that's the word. And if you were ever stopped and said, okay, if the officer stopped and said, now explain to me genocide. Well, so what I made for my students was kill many people.
Yeah.
One person. It's killing a lot of people at the same time.
Yeah, and so this happened because of so there were people who this reflected a change in our national laws because people were coming in, living here peacefully. They had committed war crimes in their own country, but they came here, they lived here peacefully, but because they passed it and these questions were not asked, the United States had no way that they could strip them of their citizenship because they didn't ask. So now, and if you don't ask, you don't tell. But now they're asking people to keep people safe.
You know, I always give the example to my students. I've been teaching long enough that I remember the case. I don't remember his name, but people who were Nazis. There are a lot of Nazis who lied, yes. Right? And when USCIS finds out, oh no, they take steps right away. And so the person might fight in court, but eventually they're going to lose because if it can be shown that they were Nazis, they cannot receive citizenship and they are sent. And I remember the case of the man, he was in his wheelchair and he was sent back to Germany. It's like, dude, you cannot lie. The rule is, you know, the question is, you know, did you ever help the Nazis? And if you were part of the Nazis, that means you. And if they find out, they're going to strip you of your citizenship, period.
Yes.
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And the question late has to do with your income tax because what they want to do is, do you owe money for taxes that are overdue? So late is the word overdue. Because you know, as long as you're okay with your taxes and they're not due yet, hey, but it's if they are overdue. And what does overdue mean? It means late.
Late. Okay. Everybody's favorite, money for sex. Let's all say it. So this one is prostitution. And also if they talk about soliciting prostitution, so that's not only the women or the people who are selling the sex, but also the people who are buying the sex too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next one, please.
All right. So this list here is the list of the 4 countries in the world that are communist countries, because the question says on the application, have you ever been a member of a communist organization or the Communist Party? And then I've had students, they come back to me and they say, oh, teacher, the officer asked me what is communist, right? And so I was just trying to think of an easy answer because people are not, you don't need to give them a lesson. You don't need to give the officer a lesson in what is communism. You just need to indicate to the officer that you understand what the question is that they're asking. And the key word in that question is communist. So if you begin to say, oh, like in Cuba or like in China, the other interesting thing is, of the four, two are being a communist. You could be friends with the United States or you could be enemies. Because North Korea and Cuba are enemies, right? But China and Vietnam, we have relations with them. So it's just so interesting that being communist doesn't tell us that you're the enemy of the United States.
The problem is it's the government. It's not the people. Yeah, the people are not the enemy.
Exactly.
It's the government party. Yeah. So now we get to number 19. Participated in an election.
Right. And the word on the application is, have you ever voted? Now, remember, on the N400, they're asking you if you have ever voted. And the person who's filling out the N400 is a person who's a permanent resident. And you cannot vote. That's the whole point of becoming a citizen, is so that you can vote. So you have this voice, right? So if the officer says to you, what is vote? It means to participate in an election. Oh, can you stop? Can you stop this? It's my son.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Hijo.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, did you tell your son that you're basically that you're helping people with citizenship on YouTube?
More important is I sent to him the link for the first two interviews, and he said, "Mom,
yeah,
blown away. I'm blown away." I hope we're not taping this, but anyway, I'm blown away.
Can you talk a little bit about what your son does?
Oh, my son is a planner for the city of Pasadena. He works in transportation. So
that's so important, Lawson.
Routes, deciding routes and times and. Anyway, and he's a fervent believer in public transportation. So
yes,
yeah,
he's doing God's work. Okay, let's go to number 20.
Okay, so the question, usually people understand this word, but the word is arrested. Have you ever been arrested? And if the officer, now I have to tell you what I do. I tell my students, now if the officer asks you what is arrested, I tell them, if you would just show them physically with your body where your hands are behind your back and you show exactly. So you can do that. All they need to know is that you understand. And what I've done is just put it in words. Police take you to the police station, right? But, they're not looking, they just want to, the officer in this moment just wants to know that, that you understand that what the question is that they're asking you, and that's how you show that you know.
But most importantly, they do prefer that you have words as opposed to action. So if you combine the words and action, that's good. They don't want people to use their native language, because the officer might understand Spanish or Vietnamese or Chinese, they have to be fair to everybody. So if you basically are giving the definitions, you have to say it in English. It does not have to be grammatically correct. It can be simple. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the important thing.
They're not teachers. They're not grammarians. All they want to know is, did you understand the question? And that you have to indicate that you understood the key word in a sentence. That's all.
Well, because they want you to understand that you're legally agreeing to this or disagreeing with this. And so you're talking about personal responsibility. So that's really, really important. They want you to understand. Okay, let's go to number 21.
Okay, so there's a section in the N400 where they're asking if you've ever been court-martialed. And that's, most people are, it's very far from their field of reference. And so what I did is made it for my students, right? Court-martial means that they're punishing you, that you've committed a crime while in the military, that you're a member of the military and that you've committed a crime. And they wouldn't put you in jail. They're going to court-martial you if you commit a crime.
So martial is related to war or to the army, and court means you go to an army court.
There you go.
So have you ever been in the army? No. So if you've never been in the U.S. military, they're not going to ask you this question, okay? Okay, number 22.
All right. They ask you, do you have a hereditary title? And
Okay.
so people need to understand what is that they're asking when they say hereditary title. Well, they're asking an example of a hereditary title is a queen or a king or a prince. So if the officer asks you, I have to tell you that I, in my history here as a teacher, had a student who had a hereditary title.
No, from where?
From England. She was a lady.
Wow.
And I said, when she came to me, I said, well, first of all, you need to make a decision because if you have your title, you can't be both. You can't be a citizen of the United States and also have a title. All people are created equal. So she went back and thought about it and she said, no, I'm ready. And I just said, okay, that's fine. They're going to make you write a declaration in the interview, but, indicating that you've given up your title. And that's what we did. So,
Okay.
but so not often do you have people that have examples of all these things. But
I just had one student from Vietnam who was part of the old king of Vietnam's
wow,
family.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like so hereditary. I think that's.
But it's
oh, no,
interesting.
that's not right.
It's interesting that you can have a green card. You just can't be a citizen.
Right.
You notice that? Because she had a green card and your student had a green card, but you just can't be a citizen.
Well, how about the former royal couple? I think they're now in Los Angeles. Meghan and who's her husband? Meghan Markle and her husband, yes. Prince Harry?
Harry.
Yeah. I think they're supposed to be.
So she was born here, so she can. But in theory, but remember, if he gives up his title, that'd be interesting. He has to be here a while first, but anyway,
we'll see what happens. Hopefully that family will work out. Okay, said or told someone.
The very first question in section 12 says, have you ever claimed to be a citizen?
Oh, please remember this. Okay, so there's.
We're very popular right at this moment.
Claim or false claim. Okay, so that is what's happening with that. And 1 second, what's the next one?
To apply, do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. The word on the application is, have you ever registered to vote? And I had a student, interesting, I had a person in this issue, if you have a green card, you cannot register to vote. Obviously, you cannot vote, but you also cannot register to vote. And he had, when he was a student at the community college, they were, people were just registering and he had filled out one. And the problem is, where do they go? They have an official confirmation that you did this. And so, for him to solve his problem, he had gone to an attorney because that's the only way to solve that problem. Because that's, And
people, sometimes it's just a mistake, okay? They didn't do it. It's one thing to register.
He's in that, but you can't do that. You always tell your students, no, you cannot do that. You're not a citizen. You cannot you cannot vote, but you cannot register either,
Okay. Number 25.
To not pay. Here, we're going back to the income tax. And your income tax should not be late, but you also need to pay it. And so the question is to owe. The word is, do you owe taxes that are overdue? And overdue was late, but owe is to not pay. Obviously, they want you to pay. And I always talk to my students that, usually income tax is very willing to make a contract with you or an agreement that if the amount is too much for you to pay at one time, that normally you can say to them, okay, let me pay X amount every month. And so if you have a contract with the IRS, then you are paying. So you would not be in this category of owing. Owing is to not pay. So if you're doing a monthly payment, then this is a no. You are, you don't owe because you are paying monthly. Okay. And that's what owe means. The word, if the officer says to you, what is owe? It means to not pay.
Okay. Now, last one, false.
Woo! They have a lot of words in there for false. They want to make sure, right, that have misleading, fraudulent.
Wait. There's several.
Misleading is a really tough word because, where are you going to find false in there? So, but fraudulent is a cognate. So, so these two words are on the application. They're asking you if you have given misleading or fraudulent or false information.
Yeah, especially the word fraudulent. I don't know if I spelled that correctly, but the key word is fraud. People know the word's fraud. Okay. Is there, I feel like, did we miss anything? Is there anything else you want to add to this list?
Oh, well, I think it's a good summary. It gives a person a good start on all the words that they need to know from the application. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna print this out. I'm gonna make it available when we post the video.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
See, now you can do that, but if I were a teacher, I would give it out without having the answers. I mean, if you're a student studying, that's fine. But as a teacher, I would give it out because you want to have your students kind of, okay, tell me what word can you remember from the application, right?
I'm going to simply print this out. I'm going to take out these definitions, go in and write it yourself, okay? Because you need to study this. If people just hand you the answers all the time, you'll never learn.
Yeah, okay, you need to interact with the material for it to stay here,
Okay, great.
And another thing that I do, I was telling you, Jennifer, another thing that I do is if I've had a group a while, they might come up with the words, and then I might say to them, okay, in the margins, tell me where that question is. So what you want them to do is to interact with their application. They need to feel like that application is like a book that they've learned and read. So that's why I have them circle the words, charged, advocate, probation. That's where we start. Then I would hand out the worksheet where I would have the definitions over there, and they would need to come up with the words. And another activity that I would have is say, okay, now you tell me what page number and what question number, where would I find each of these words, just so that they're going back and forth and feeling like the application is theirs, like they're interacting.
Okay, so maybe I'll add a column here about question number. Okay.
Good.
I'll take out the answers. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to say about this? Because this has been so helpful for people.
Oh, good. It'd be lovely to hear from people to see if they also feel it's helpful for them.
Okay, great. So, anything else you want to say before we close this afternoon?
Be safe. Stay inside. Wear your mask.
Yeah, no guns. Don't shoot guns in the air, okay?
No fireworks. At least in our area, no fireworks at all.
So 1 second. So we want you to stay home, stay healthy, stay strong, and we know you're going to be great American citizens. Thank you so much. Yes. Bye-bye. Mwah. Okay, so
what did you think? I gotta call my son here. But,
okay. So we're going to stop share, and that's it. And I will